So I made a little over $4,500 with this trade I took right here. And instead of walking you through and just showing you the live recording of it, I want to kind of do a recap to walk you through why I jumped into this trade. It's a little bit different than normal, and to show you some of the levels I'm looking at and how, I kind of jumped in here on a trade and was able to capture, really nice 3 times my profit at like $4,500 for the day. And so what I want to look at here is, first off, as always with every trade I'm looking at, just to show you kind of big picture here, is this support level I took a trade off of was this right here. The market essentially gapped up and then was right here, reversed and went higher, or that's what I'm looking for, because we kind of sold off overnight. Market opened up right here and got really overextended. And so what I'm looking for is that overextension to fail. And so what I looked for here was the market opened up here at 7:30, pretty much right here actually. And that's a really good target I like to do for these trades. But so what I'm looking at is the market sold off, and then it was essentially an unhealthy move. And so with these trades, every time what I'm looking for with one of these reversals is it to come down to one of these levels, and in a big way, the overall trend needs to show a potential for reversal. And I want it to be essentially a final spike that helps allow me to jump in and look for a larger move to the upside that I can capture. That's the biggest thing when it comes to looking for these 15 or 30-minute reversals, is that, I'm looking for that quick spike, but if the market's gonna have a bigger picture move, I'm happy to try and stay in and capture that. And so with this trade specifically, what I saw and what I really liked was we have, a clean downtrend overnight and then a big flush lower. And so to me, that kind of made it seem a lot like it was a final kind of bait. A lot of the times when I have a bias in the overall market, the big picture bias is very important, I find. And so having the market go against that and essentially fake the other direction in terms of, if I think that we're at a spot where I think it's going to reverse, well, if it kind of does a quick fake in that direction, I can look as that's a trap. A lot of the market's opening, a lot of people might see a lot of movement down overnight, and they might think, oh, I can jump in on this and get in and capture the market continuing lower. But a lot of the time I find that instead it fakes out and reverses higher. And so, especially with it aligning up with a support level down here, it allows me to look for a lot of that potential. And so how I ended up jumping in on this trade, just to kind of zoom back to the start quickly, just to show you, is, it came down here initially and then started to slow down, right? And so this chop right here, I really like for showing that this momentum is potentially slowing. Now, it could be just a spot like this where there's some chop and it just continues lower. And so what keyed me into the potential that it's gonna reverse is, well, these candlesticks are really big, and then we have some strong momentum here coming off of that low. And so what that does is that makes me realize, okay, could have a reversal here, but it's not confirmed yet. I'm not just gonna jump in on this big bullish candlestick. Another thing to look at here is flipping between the ES and the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is selling off and the ES is selling off. They're both very much aligned. I think it's very important to have both markets aligned for things to play out. I find often if, the ES is selling off and the NASDAQ is kind of flat, not a good trade is gonna happen. And so what I was watching here is this red line is that 15-minute reversal timing. And so what I'm looking at is, well, we've made a nice pullback here. And so if we're going to continue lower, I think that's going to be a important high right here, and it's going to continue lower off of that and make a new low. But keeping in mind that I'm looking for potential long, if it does essentially break this high right here, I think that it could continue higher and make a larger reversal in that sense. And so what I'm looking for is essentially to see what this pullback looks like. All my trades, I don't know what the pullback's going to look like, when it's going to have a nice pullback. It's a lot about trading and waiting for these. Is a lot about just being really open-minded of, okay, I see the potential here. What do I want to see the market do for me to jump in? If it does this, I will jump in. And if it doesn't do that, I'll stay out. I find a good way to trade is to be really open-minded about what the market is actually doing, and having it to where you almost are trying to say, hey, you need to show me something and really good for me to jump in, convince me to get in, versus FOMOing and trying to find reasons to get in. Find reasons, or a lot of reasons, to stay out and have the market have to really convince you to jump in. And so I put in pretty much a stop order above that high. So when it made a new high, I jumped in. I thought that was a strong enough signal. I didn't wait for this candlestick to finish forming. Sometimes I do that because I think that there's enough momentum in the market that if it breaks, I think it's gonna move quickly. And so in this case, I just jumped in on a break of that. Waiting for the candle close would have made sense, or would have worked in this case too. But sometimes, you can have a rip happen really quickly. And I thought the signal was strong enough. And so that's a decision you can make. And then I used my, risk reward drawing tool, stop below this kind of pullback here, with the idea that if it does pull back, I want to get out, right? I think that this is going to work out quickly. And this pullback right here was a big deciding factor, if it's going to go higher. It came and tested this kind of chop range that it had. And then from there, I'm just looking to see, okay, is it going to go back to the market open, or is it going to continue up from there? And so to kind of zoom forwards in this, back to where we were, to show you what was going on. And as well as right now, I actually have a Black Friday sale on my full course that goes in way more in depth into this, 10 plus hours of content talking about how to avoid, how to stay in these trades, how to capture them properly, how to manage them properly, and then also the mental side of trading that is extremely important to being consistently successful with this. A lot of people have really found that important to actually consistently executing. If you've looked at some of my challenges, I have not followed those very well, and it's been very detrimental to my trading. I've lost a lot of money because I haven't been on the right side of the mental side of trading. I've got it a lot back recently, and I've been able to capture good trades and focus on my strategy, but it's a lot harder when you let your emotions control your actions. So in terms of managing this was very fast paced move up that it had. And so what I'm looking at, the initial thought was, okay, market open, blew right through that. And then the last thing was I drew some of these resistance or support zones. And just to pull a chart up here, what those were was essentially, okay, these previous swing lows that the market had on a bigger picture 15-minute chart. And so I'm thinking, hey, maybe we come up and retest those. You can see that right there. And so, this was the easy money, I think, was essentially made up to that level. And because we have such a parabolic move, I find when you have parabolic moves, you have to tighten your stop quickly. I haven't moved it up. I have it at break even, but if the market moves down, I have a mental stop for a little while here. But as it, made this big bar, I thought, hey, if we break this, I definitely want to get out. Hopefully I get out before then, but I also want to give it some room. Like, I want to give it room to a 50% pullback, this uptrend. It's always a big balance of trying to manage how you are going to, emotionally deal with being in a trade, but also manage the potential, the potential that this continues to rip higher, but the potential that it also rips higher a little bit more and then rips back lower. Because, my whole strategy is seeing unhealthy moves and reversing those. Well, I'm also capturing an unhealthy move here, and looking for that potentially reverse can be a problem. And so, kind of just trailing up my stop here and eventually getting out if it kind of breaks higher here in a tricky way. And so essentially what happens is it makes a spike higher, almost hits my limit, and then reverses down and knocks me out. And I call it a day on that.